My ex-wife, every bad thing you could imagine.
There was more bad news when his bold space transport company SpaceX again failed to get a rocket into orbit.
The first launch didn't get very far, got about a minute up, and then there was an engine fire, and that was it. The second flight actually did make it to space, but not to orbit. And then also with Flight 3, we didn't get all the way to orbit.
He started saying, I've got enough money for 3 cracks at it. He put $100 million of his own money, and he sort of hinted at the idea that after 3, if he didn't make it, it would be over. SpaceX would die.
Musk burned through the $100 million he had sunk into SpaceX. Now he was on his way back to the drawing board.
3 days after the failure, he announced, first that he knew what was wrong. He announced that they'd raise money to finance a 4th launch, and the 4th launch was going to happen in a matter of months, which in the rocket industry was a crazy announcement.
We were able to solve the problems, and then just as we'd solved those problems, we ran smack into the worst economic recession since the Great Depression.
It's been one of the darkest days on Wall Street in recent memory. Stock markets falling the most since 9/11, the Dow off more than 500 points.
This is what financial Armageddon looks like. Red screens that scream sell, sell, sell.
It was a week that shook Wall Street and indeed the world.
And a realization that the economy may still head into a deeper downturn.
As 2008 drew to a close, Elon Musk faced the worst crisis of his career. All 3 of his companies appeared to be in free fall.
The worst point was probably just the weekend before Christmas in 2008. We had the economic tsunami take place and made things even worse. If it wasn't needed, we had to shut it down and just figure out how do we get through this dark period and not go bankrupt.
General Motors shares falling to more than a 20-year low after Goldman cut the automaker's rating to sell on a worsening sales outlook.
That was tough. It was obviously an economic period that saw the bankruptcy of General Motors and Chrysler, and there we were, a young company selling a very optional car. It was really people don't need a $100,000 sports car.
And they certainly wouldn't want one getting poor reviews. The popular BBC program Top Gear took the Tesla Roadster on a test drive in December 2008.
This car then really was shaping up to be something wonderful. But then... although Tesla say it'll do 200 miles, we worked out that on our track it would run out after just 55 miles. And if it does run out, it's not a quick job to charge it up again.
The combative CEO charged the incident was faked and said he had proof that the Roadster had not run out of power. He sued the BBC to block reruns of the show. The case was later dismissed. But things would get even tougher. His energy company, Solar City, foundered. The bank that had backed their leases pulled out of the deal.
I certainly did not anticipate that we would have the worst economic climate since the Great Depression, and one which was disproportionately bad for cars. General Motors went bankrupt. General effing Motors, you know?
Musk was in the fight of his life.
We had maybe about a week's worth of cash in the bank, or less, and there was just very little time left in the year to resolve these things. There were like 2 or 3 business days left in the year. I never thought it was possible for me to have a nervous breakdown, but if it was possible for me to have a nervous breakdown, that was about as close as I was going to come.
When Elon was going through his sad period, I was so sad. I felt like I had a hole in my heart, and there's nothing you can do. You just hurt so much, and I just didn't see him getting out of it. He was just so sad. And then the next thing I get this call saying, "Ma, you can't believe it. I've met a wonderful woman."
The one bright spot was meeting Tallulah Riley, a British actress who had never heard of Tesla, SpaceX, or Elon Musk. They married in 2010.
I thought he was some sort of hapless engineer that had wandered into a London club, and he just looked so forlorn. He was sort of just sat in a corner on his BlackBerry, and he just looked really out of place, and sad. I was, trying to be very sweet to him and sort of humouring him, going, oh yes, when he was going, this is my rocket, and this is my car.
Musk's personal life was looking up, and the future of SpaceX was finally taking off.
We have liftoff.
The fourth attempt to launch the Falcon 1 was a huge success. And 3 months later, NASA rewarded SpaceX with a $1.6 billion contract to resupply the International Space Station. But Musk had no time to celebrate. Tesla was on the verge of financial disaster.
I had to make a choice then that either I took all of the capital that I had left from the sale of PayPal to eBay and invest that in Tesla, or Tesla would die.
The company is really teetering on the brink of failure. And there's this board meeting late in 2008 where they're discussing what's going to happen. And Elon just says, well, I'm going to raise a $40 million round to keep the company going. And the board members are kind of wondering, well, how's he going to do that? And he says, I'm going to put it all in myself.
And that incredible braggadocio confidence catalyzed a change in people's opinion. And we and everyone else around the table was like, oh my gosh, we want to be part of this. We want to get as much of this investment as we can. He saved the company in its darkest hour with an act of heroism that is hard to describe. There's nothing quite like spending your last remaining dollar on a project you believe in.
It was thankfully a good week, but definitely took its toll from a mental strain standpoint. I think I've mentally just burned out a few circuits.
Just after his emergency cash infusion came the news they desperately needed. A $40 million deal with Daimler for smart car batteries. Daimler later added $50 million for 10% of the company. Determined not to repeat past mistakes, Musk focused on bringing his family car to life.
So I decided, look, we really need to have our own design studio, and that's when I hired Franz von Holzhausen to design the Model S.
His green agenda was irresistible to von Holzhausen, a legendary figure in car design who had already revolutionized the looks of VW, GM, and Mazda.
He's completely passionate to really rid the world of this addiction to fossil fuel. And that was something that he talked about from the very first sentence, first conversation that we had.
With a new team in place, Musk completely revamped the look of the Model S.
A sedan doesn't have to be a brick. It doesn't have to be a big blocky car. We wanted to bring this kind of passion and feeling back to this marketplace. The architecture of Model S is really similar to a skateboard. The floor of the vehicle is the battery pack, and the motors between the rear wheels, and everything above that is the opportunity space.
In March 2009, Musk unveiled the prototype for the Model S. It could hold 7 passengers and as much luggage as a station wagon. But to build it, he knew he needed a piece of the U.S. government's new $7.5 billion loan program to support alternative energy vehicles.
In order for Model S to truly be successful, it was important that the loan come through.
The government funding was controversial. The New York Times writer Randy Strauss called the program the bailout of very, very high net worth individuals who invested in Tesla Motors Act. Musk struck back.
Randy Strauss is a huge douchebag. And an idiot. Okay.
It wasn't a bailout, but a loan. The Obama administration agreed to lend Tesla $465 million to mass produce the Model S, a move that astounded many in the industry.
It's very unlikely that the Tesla investment is ever repaid to the taxpayers. Electric vehicles are really not possible in ways that would be effective for most consumers still. This is just the religion of electric vehicles, and like Jonestown, that religion will come to an end.
There are most certainly people who want to see Tesla fail because it is an attack on the mainstream car industry.
Of course, the biggest impact that Tesla will have is not the cars that we make ourselves, but the fact that we show that you can make compelling electric cars that people really want to buy.
The government loan came with a check.